about it that I've said before, even within the church, even within some of these different religious settings where we have sometimes a veneer of being holy or the veneer of being spiritual. Not to say that there aren't spiritual people there, but even within that setting, you still can see women going for the same fleshly, carnal things. You still see it. Just because you now go to a few Bible studies, put on a church dress, memorize a Bible scripture, doesn't necessarily mean that those desires or those carnal desires go away. And so I have seen this even in women in the church who claim that they want a man of God, and they say, oh, I want just a God-fearing man that can pray and can memorize scripture and can, lay hands upon me, and cast out demons or whatever. They'll say all this spiritual stuff. And then you talk to them just a few minutes, and then they start talking about height, and they start talking about his educational background, or they start talking about how much money he makes. They start talking about his looks. And it's like, sis, you literally want the same thing that every woman who says that she's not saved or doesn't know God or doesn't love God, you just want what all women want. And this is where I wish sometimes there could be a little bit more honesty about what's going on, because when we couch God's desires and mix God's desires with what we want personally or what we want fleshly, it sets us up for failure. Because like I said, there are plenty of women that I know who say that they want a God-fearing man that wouldn't even give Jesus a chance. Wouldn't even give him a chance. Why? He was a carpenter. These women don't want no carpenter. They want a high-value man. They want a man that has education. They ain't giving him a chance. He didn't have a lot of money. And these women women who want God-fearing men ain't trying to mess with the dude. They ain't got no money. He wasn't considered attractive by the biblical narrative, and they ain't trying to deal with no unattractive man. He was even homeless from time to time doing the will of the Lord. So these women who want God-fearing men, Jesus himself would be disqualified from the dating standards. And this is the kind of stuff that we see. This is the kind of stuff that I've literally seen this in church culture. And I think, when we don't talk about this and we don't address the fact that even in some of these religious settings, we can still hold on to, or we can still have standards that are either the unrealistic or quite frankly, they're just, fleshly. It sets us up for failure. And here is the reality. Even if you come into church and now that you're a woman of God and you've given your life to the Lord, great. Not saying God can't forgive you. Not saying you can't have a lovely life. But you still have to be realistic about the fact that even the husband that you're going for, if you want a God-fearing man, he also has his desires. Godly men, even men that I know in the church, men who I know who serve, they still want fit, feminine, and friendly, attractive women. They still want it. Man of God, I know off the top of my head, I can think of 3 or 4 men who are like, if they're not pastors or elders, they're in leadership positions, and they married young, attractive women. They married women who were 10 to 15 years younger than them. Young, attractive women. These are men of God, pastors, leaders, serving. None of them married ugly women. I have never met a man, even in church, in Bible study, who has said that looks doesn't matter. Even godly men want attractive women. Even godly men want women who have a past, who have demonstrated discipline, have demonstrated good character, have demonstrated good decision making. So again, this is what I'm saying. I think sometimes what happens is that lovely ladies, we run the streets, and then we look at church as a way out, thinking that's going to be our way out of having to dealing with the consequences of our life. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's her situation. But what I am saying is that when we do that, we set ourselves up for failure. Because the reality is, again, when you come to the gospel is not necessarily about you getting what you want. It's not about that. It is not about you getting everything you want. God does not guarantee that we're all going to have a high value, a 6-figure, 6-pack husband. God doesn't guarantee that. That's not necessarily a guarantee of following him. And I think sometimes there are women who come in after they've pretty much made a mess of their life, and they come into the church thinking that they're going to get a get out of jail free card, that just because they've been, maybe praying for extra and they've been, putting in their spiritual work, now God is going to pay them back. And it doesn't work like that. Like I said, yeah, God can change you personally, and yeah, maybe you can experience more internal peace, but you still are going to have to deal with the fact that if you've made some bad decisions, some of those things may impact you. You might find a man within the church who will deal with you, your baby mama. You might not. You might find men where it's just like, I don't want to deal with that. But like I said, there's no guarantee. So that's what I'm saying. I wish there was just more of an honest conversation about how when you do that, when you engage in that kind of behavior, women, Black women, when we do that, we impact our results. Period. Whether you're in church or outside of the church, whether you unsaved, saved or unsaved, you impact your ability to get the kind of men that you want. And we just have to be honest about that. So you cannot put in a tall order or go for the tip top guy who was without spot and blemish when you have a tethered, heavily stained past. Like, it doesn't necessarily work like that. Again, guys, if you're on here, hit that like button. Shout out to